Do you know what I think about this? I want to know the full list of what I'm not supposed to say. And I'm going to say everything on that list every day. Give me the list. Give me the list of what I'm not supposed to say about Israel, about what I'm not supposed to say about Jews. And you make that illegal, I'm going to say it every day. And I am anti-Israel, period.
Whoa. We're going to do an analysis of Scott Adams getting really, 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 really upset once he found out the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism is being passed into bills and executive orders all over America. We're going to watch that video, not to completely agree with Snotty Scotty. I call him Snotty Scotty because he blocked me on Twitter for being right about the COVID vaccine, but it's not to agree with him. It's to do and provide accurate analysis to what's going on. And I really think today everybody needs to hear this, whether you agree with a lot of my live streams. Perhaps you're a Christian Zionist who feels like in order to get into heaven, you have to put your head down, give as much money to Israel as possible, and any thought of doing otherwise is hate speech or not what Jesus wanted. I think this is going to be a great discussion for everybody all around this spectrum, because it's really, really important. It's really, really relevant, and something has broken in the culture that a lot of people are not aware of. So let's talk about it. I have a very in-depth, detailed report for you today. We're going to listen to those full clips, and we're also going to look at Mark Levin has actually defended those IHRA anti-Semitism speech laws with the help of Pastor John Hagee, one of the most famous pastors in America. He's one of the pastors that is responsible, I believe, for normalizing Zionism in the Christian church. I'm not saying he's the only one, but he's perhaps the biggest advocate for our relationship with Israel. A lot of stuff to talk about. And I really want, before I hit the Dreamer Podcast welcome to the show button, I really want people who disagree with me to listen and consider what I'm saying. Because even if you disagree with me, you might want to know why somebody like Scott Adams, who was super, 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 super pro-Israel like a year ago, now feels this way. You could chalk it all up to hate and propaganda, but at the end of the day, there's something going on that a lot of people are not aware of, and the less aware they are, the more the tides are going to turn. So it's something that you should consider, even if you disagree with some stuff I'm saying, because I think with an open mind and an open heart, you might be able to learn a few things. God bless you guys. Dreamer Podcast starts now. Give me a thumbs up in the chat and a thumbs up in the algorithm if everything sounds good.
It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. Yeah.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Cinco de Mayo. I am not eating a taco bowl or drinking alcohol like Modelo, performing some sort of stereotype. I'm working because I enjoy my job and I appreciate everybody for being here. So, ready? I'm going to play this first clip. I'm going to jump right into it, but I want to really paint a picture real quick before we get into Mark Levin defending the speech laws and Scott Adams. I'm going to call him for this live stream Snotty Scotty or Snotty Scotty because it's funnier that way. But anyway, here's just a little compilation I made of two things that Trump and Nancy Pelosi said about Israel. And let me know if you are an American citizen, even if you're pro-Israel, even if you think we should give them hundreds of billions of dollars. Do you think it's normal for a sitting senator to say if the Capitol, or rather maybe House member, if the Capitol crumbled to the ground, we'd still be giving aid to Israel and that they should literally own our Congress? And if you do think that that's normal, we're going to talk about it because I do find some inconsistencies in the pro-Christian Zionist argument that makes literally zero sense. And I've talked about it later in one of my podcasts, like 3 hours in, but never this early. And I want to address it. So here's this compilation I made, and ask yourself, if you're an American citizen, is this okay to you? And I'll read some comments.
I have said to people when they ask me, if this Capitol crumbled to the ground, the one thing that would remain is our commitment to our aid, and I don't even call it aid, our cooperation with Israel. Because that's fundamental to who we, fundamental.
You know, the biggest change I've seen in Congress is Israel literally owned Congress. You understand that 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And it was so powerful. And we're not talking about over a very long period of time. But I think you know exactly what I'm saying. They had such power. Israel had such power, and rightfully, over Congress. And now it doesn't.
The United States backs Israel but they back it less than they used to. I was having a lot of problems getting support for Israel. And I can't really understand it because I grew up in a world where everything evolved around politically. Everything evolved around Israel, and the power was amazing. One bad word about Israel, and you were virtually out of politics.
I have said to people when they ask me, if this capital crumbled to the ground, the one thing that would remain is our commitment to our aid, and I don't even call it aid, our cooperation with Israel, because that's fundamental.
So I already see some people spiraling in the comment section. Do me a favor, listen and consider what I'm saying, please, for the love of God. All right, so this is part of the backlash that's happened recently. So even if you are, like, I'm just going to use an example. Say you're super, super pro-Israel. You're totally a boomer. You believe that in order to meet Jesus, you have to give hundreds of billions of dollars of foreign aid unconditionally. You're not allowed to think about it whatsoever. You know, you just are obsessed with them and you feel like that's the only way you're going to get into heaven. Let's say that's true. And let's say you want other people to be pro-Israel with you. And those numbers are not only dwindling amongst the youth, but even amongst the conservative party. Like, I'm going to play the clip of Scott Adams later, who a year ago was incredibly pro-Israel, but now he seems to call himself anti-Israel, which is a label that I don't even myself accept, but he's spiraling because he just realized that Republicans are passing hate speech laws essentially for Israel. With that being said, even if you're pro-Israel, do you understand why it's insane to most people for Nancy Pelosi to sit there and say, if our capital in our country crumbled to the ground, which pretty much means we're being attacked, we're being destroyed, we're being ruined from within, our capital's crumbling. I mean, the sign of an empire getting destroyed. Nancy Pelosi says, we'd still be giving aid to Israel, even if our capital crumbled. Do you understand why people are starting to get a little suspicious? Donald Trump saying Israel used to literally own Congress and now they don't. And it's crazy. And he was referring to the Squad, which is a very small part of the Democratic Party, still overwhelmingly foreign aid bills to Israel and speech laws pass overwhelmingly. The entire GOP, except for Thomas Massey, usually signs off on it. If there aren't a few detractors like there have been recently, most Democrats are okay with it. So this idea that, like, because 95% of Congress or 80% of Congress votes with Israel, not 100, like Trump has a problem with it, it's making people weirded out. I want to read something real quick from Mark Levin and Pastor Hagee, who is extraordinarily popular within the Christian megachurch world. Here's Mark Levin. He said, some of the attacks on this legislation are appalling. Thank you, Pastor Hagee and Ralph Reed. And apparently John Hagee of Christians United for Israel and Ralph Reed of Faith and Freedom Coalition says that the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act is saying that the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act is anti-Christian are as insulting as they are injurious, adding to that the debate exemplifies the need for this legislation. So you actually have Christian pastors coming out saying, we need anti-Semitism speech laws in America. And it says at the bottom, it says, this law no more stifles free speech than the presence of a thermometer would change the temperature. This law is sound. The biblical and moral mandate is clear. We thank Speaker Johnson for this measure forward. They talk about all the anti-Semitism going on in the world. And basically, Mark Levin, even Ben Shapiro himself, is against this bill. This is my personal opinion based off of evidence that a lot of people are not aware of. I knew these bills were being passed in 2019. I know not Ben Shapiro specifically, but people that I know never talked about it until last week. And I know for a fact, I was in the same room with them when I told them about it in 2019. I said, the Republican Party is passing this Israel Jewish speech law that I believe goes against the Constitution. And I know people that said nothing for 5 years until now. Ben Shapiro, I think he knew about them for a long time, but he came out and disagreed with it because it's publicly popular to do so. Mark Levin doesn't feel the need to do that. In fact, he's citing Pastor John Hagee, who's a Christian, or says he is, a mega church, mega guy or whatever. He's like one of the biggest pastors in the country, being like, this bill is not anti-free speech and it's not anti-Christian. This bill is sound. It's like a thermometer taking the temperature of the country. I've gone through the speech rules. Most people, I want to say this real quick, the people that never listen and learn that, and it's not their fault, maybe if they listen to John Hagee and Mark Levin, they might think oh, this bill's only going to stop hate or violence or this or that. I've posted about it on Instagram today. I've had multiple accusations. Someone called me a Nazi. Somebody said, are you okay with rape and death and all these evil things that, of course, I'm not okay with. But that's their justification and shield, where they throw out this extreme example in front of people's face and they go, oh, that's what you want. And you're like, no. If you actually go to Defining Anti-Semitism State Department, these are the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism. It says that, accusing Israel of racist behavior is anti-Semitism, saying that any Jewish person in America has loyalty to Israel is anti-Semitism, even though one of the frat bros recently went on television and he said, I was there for Israel, our country of Israel, not America. So it shows he has loyalty to Israel. That's fine. I don't care. But you can't even say it now or else it's anti-Semitism. You're not allowed to make mendacious and dehumanizing claims that Jewish people own political arenas or media companies, even though obviously everybody knows that a lot of Jewish people do own media companies and a lot of things in America, which is fine. I don't care. It's just now it's hate speech in America to say it, which is only making more people suspicious and annoyed with the fact that apparently there's one race, one religion, and one foreign country that's above the First Amendment. And when you point it out and simply just want equality of law in the rule of law, then all of a sudden you get accused of some of the most foul things of all time. And even Mark Levin's totally okay with that. And Pastor John Hagee is okay with that. This is only making people more skeptical of Israel and even maybe like Jewish ownership statistics and stuff that nobody really thought about 10 years ago, but now is becoming more popular on X and other social media. I'm just letting people know that the reason that people are starting to ask questions is because you have sitting politicians literally like, if our capital crumbles, we're still going to be funneling money to you. And it's like, and then I have someone on Instagram calling me a literal Nazi because saying we don't need your money, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, but they've taken hundreds of billions of dollars of U.S. taxpayer money. I'm not saying you do or don't need my money, but I'm tired of being falsely slandered anytime it's like, I respect the fact that your nation can exist and you want to defend yourself, but clearly it's not a two-way street. And I'm going to get into this conversation later, but this is a conversation I have. I know there's different types of people. Someone like Mark Levin, I don't know what his maybe ambitions are, but the fact that he's okay with a hate speech, essentially, law in America for his ethnic group seems, and Donald Trump is okay with passing it, even though he's not Jewish, but he's Christian or Catholic. It just shows me that, and this is a conversation that I've had for years that I got in trouble for talking about, but it's true. The Republican Party prioritizes Zionism over America. That's just the truth. If you're going to pass a bill that you normally wouldn't pass for a foreign country or group of people and saying anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, and now, the First Amendment's in question, but you wouldn't even pass a blasphemy law for your own religion. Like in Muslim countries, it's like you can't criticize Allah and you can't criticize the king. In America, you can't talk about Israel. So it's like, that's the rule of our law. We don't have a Christian leader. And I'm not saying they should. I'm not asking for a blasphemy law. But if a Catholic Christian regime was in and they really didn't want you to, blaspheme our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, they would pass a law that says that you're not allowed to talk about Jesus Christ in a negative way. But instead, in America, you can't talk about Israel and you can't apparently say that Jews killed Jesus. That is now hate speech. And I want to be clear about this. I don't care whether you think it was the Romans or the Jewish Pharisees of the time or neither. I don't care what you think. I don't care if you believe that, a loaf of Wonder Bread is the God and it's a flying spaghetti monster like Richard Dawkins tells you. It doesn't matter to me, but it's outlawing biblical discussion. So if there's two Christians that want to sit in a church or a school somewhere and have a discussion, and one of the teachers wants to say, here's the story of the death of Jesus Christ. According to legislation, that is now technically deemed anti-Semitism or hate speech. So it's not to tell people what to believe. It's just saying that our country is creating blasphemy laws for a foreign country. I'm going to have a conversation with Christian Zionists later about why I think that their views don't match their actions. But real quick, I just want to show Scott Adams freaking out about this. And I just want to say, this is not my opinion. This is Scott Adams' opinion. He curses a lot. He's freaking out. I knew about these laws since 2019, so I'm very calm. I could have a discussion about it, but Scott is very, very upset. And I just want to say, this guy was super pro-Israel like a year ago. In fact, I think I remember him constantly arguing with people who tried to have certain conversations. And now, Like he's upset with Israel. He's upset with the ADL. And he's upset with the Republicans. And, you know, I'm just playing this for news analyst purposes, but he, you know, like this used to be a huge ally. And now listen to him.
A foreign group, the Holocaust Alliance Group, if they said that if you're a Holocaust denier, you've broken this law, then I go to jail because the ADL accused me of something that didn't happen. And somebody else can define that as good enough for me to go to jail. Do you know what I think about this? I want to know the full list of what I'm not supposed to fucking say. And I'm going to say everything on that fucking list every day. Give me the list. Give me the fucking list of what I'm not supposed to say about Israel, about what I'm not supposed to say about Jews. And you make that illegal, I'm going to say it every fucking day. And I am anti-Israel, period.
So if you guys are wondering who Snotty Scotty is, or Scott Adams, Snotty Scotty is the Dilbert cartoonist. I think he predicted Trump winning in 2016. He was a great follow on social media. He blocked me because he was like, you know, he got vaccinated and was like tweeting a bunch of weird stuff. I'm on his not literally on his podcast, but he talks about me on his podcast and says like, I'm so smart. I don't need to debate Anomaly about the vaccine. It's funny. I like Snotty Scotty, but anyway, that for those wondering, that's who Scott Adams is. Snotty Scotty's the Dilbert cartoonist, but listen to him there. He says he's anti-Israel. He's really upset. And he goes even further. He says, if you're going to make a list of hate speech laws that I'm not supposed to say, I'm going to say them every day just to flex my First Amendment. Here's the second clip.
I am fucking anti-Israel because the ADL, I know the ADL doesn't work for Israel, but if Israel doesn't shut their fucking dog down, which is the ADL, their little attack dog, they can shut them down tomorrow. Shut them the fuck down. I can't have the ADL and this law at the same time. I cannot have the ADL in business accusing people of being Holocaust deniers with this particular system. Fuck Israel. Fuck Israel. Fuck the ADL. I love the Jews. Let me be quite clear about that. I love the Jews. I love the Jewish people. Love Israelis. Love American Jews. This can't stand. If you want to make me fucking hate the people you want me to like, keep doing this. Keep telling me you're going to put me in fucking jail for my opinion. In this case, an opinion I didn't even hold. You motherfuckers. And by the way, if somebody votes for this, I need the whole list of anybody in the Senate who votes for this. I want to know if there's any fucking Republican who votes for this. If you're a Republican in the Senate and you vote for this, you're my enemy.
He says, you know, I'm so against these laws and I didn't even care about them like a week ago. This is making me against this stuff. That begs the question, are they purposely turning people against it? Because anybody with self-awareness would know, like passing a hate speech law in America, it's going to make conservative Americans not like whatever you're trying to get them to not say. And it's going to make them want to say it more, you know, not everybody, but conservative Americans. So that's my question is like, are the politicians so sold out to their donor class that they're just completely oblivious of this? Or is it like a purposeful thing to make people annoyed so then they could pass more laws and get annoyed so then they could justify more sort of things? It's really hard to tell. But the reason I played this clip is one, you know, Scott was the opposite person a year ago. So if you are, you know, and I could speak to people who agree with everything I say, but I want to speak to people that are critics of mine, that are pro-Israel, maybe for ethnic reasons, maybe for religious reasons, maybe they're Christian, maybe they're not, maybe they're conservative, maybe they're not. But if you're pro-Israel, do you understand how pushing these hate speech laws and constantly just jamming your opinions down everybody's throat and calling them anti-Semitic for disagreeing with foreign aid or calling them Nazis or saying that they believe in the most horrific things ever when they simply just say they like the First Amendment, and then you try to straw man what the laws really are with something that they're not? Do you realize how it's just every day more and more and more people are basically waking up and being like, well, no, that's not a fair relationship. And someone like Mark Levin, you know, Mark Levin is justifying these laws. And I guarantee you, if anybody confronted Mark Levin and just said, hey, Mark Levin, like, that's crazy. Like, what are you doing? Like, you know, do you think Mark Levin would use the word anti-Semitic? I'm sure he has thousands of times, just like Ben Shapiro and a lot of other people and Trump and DeSantis and everyone. So it's like, when you want to have an honest conversation, it's just anti-Semitism. Having no self-awareness is absolutely, and this is like, you know, hard to say because then you'll just get accused of anti-Semitic. It's like having no self-awareness, no self-accountability, and just constantly treating others horrifically is not a good way to make whatever opinion you have, popular. It's a horrific strategy. Like, I'm simply posting, and someone's, I had a little conversation with this guy because he literally he was like, oh, so you're trying to allow people to talk about like babies being murdered. And it's like, what? No, what are you talking about? Am I trying to do what? Like, read the laws. That's not what the laws say. You're acting like that's what it says as a shield in order to push an agenda against my First Amendment. And then you're going to call me every name under the sun when I simply know that you're lying and exaggerating. And these laws that are being passed are basically a liability shield for you, in which it now says it's anti-Semitism to even say that you're exaggerating about a numerous amount of topics, which is crazy in itself. And it's, I do think Scott was exaggerating a little bit, saying he's going to go to jail for these laws. He's not going to go to jail now, maybe in 5 years, though. He's not going to go to jail now. But maybe if they could, they would in this country. So it's like, it's not going to jail you right this second. But eventually it absolutely probably will. So I'm not really opposed to him saying that, although I just don't agree, with his framing. That's why I'm not him. And Snotty Scotty, he blocked me on Twitter because I was going to destroy him in a debate about COVID. But that's okay. I forgive you, Snotty Scotty. It's all good. And now I want to have, before I get into some other stuff, I want to really have a conversation with Christian Zionists. There's tens or hundreds of millions of Christian Zionists, and they say a lot of them are boomers on Facebook. A lot of them, I posted a meme and I posted it about like a woman and a guy, and the woman basically says, tell me something romantic. And the guy says, I wouldn't give a dime to Ukraine or Israel, right? And all the Facebook boomers, it's insane. They swarm me like locusts. Not really, but that's a little exaggerated, but they swarm the post and they go, yeah, let's not give money to Ukraine. And I'm like, what about Israel? And then they're like, yeah, but we need to give money to Israel. And I'm like, why? They're like, they're our greatest ally. And it's like, okay, can we be an ally in another way? Or no, we just got to constantly give money. We have speech laws passed in our country against our constitution. We're constantly called hateful when we have a conversation. Is there ever a point to come to the table and want a fair ally? I want to give this example for, it's probably maybe not the best analogy, but like, imagine if you just have a wife and you're like, she's a great loyal wife. And it's like, okay, but she just banged the neighbors. And you're like, what are you, hateful? And you're like, no, it's like, here, like, just watch. Like, she's on the porch right now banging the neighbor. And you're like, I have unquestionable love for her. It's okay, but it's not happening. It's like, yeah, of course you have allies and friends in this world, but your allies, your friends, your wife, I mean, the reason that it works is because they also have loyalty to you. If it's only a one-sided relationship and it's not fair, it's totally within your rights to be like, hey, let's still be friends, but like, let's make sure that we're both getting a fair end of this deal. And right now in this country, I believe it's wildly unfair in the sense of, in this country, if you're an American citizen, like let's just say Ron Paul, right? Ron Paul, one of the greatest congressmen in modern history. He ran for president. And Ben Shapiro was constantly just saying he hated Jews and he was anti-Semitic, okay? A lot of the press was deeming Ron Paul anti-Semitic. Okay, there's Israeli loyalty pledges in government in some cases where you literally can't get a government contract without pledging your loyalty to Israel. These hate speech laws are actually even older than I was talking about because they were anti-BDS laws where on an American campus you can protest America, but boycotting Israel or divesting in Israel is now a violation. But you could divest from any state, any country, just not them. So it's like this country, I'm just being honest, and I'm going to get to the Christian Zionist angle in a second, even if you support Israel, let's just call a spade a spade. America has Israeli blasphemy laws. America is passing Jewish blasphemy laws. It's just the truth. It's like this, there's no Jesus blasphemy laws. It's reversed. Not only can you blaspheme Jesus, which is done in the media all the time by people that must not be named, of course, not always, but so many times when you see Jesus blasphemy in mainstream media and these weird, perverted, like Jesus blasphemy, like little cartoons and stuff, you just got to go and see who's making it. And it's not a big shocker. But anyway, okay, it's a free country, right? You're free to blaspheme my Lord and Savior. You're free to make fun of them and pervert, the religion. Am I free to call you out? No, that's anti-Semitism. Am I free to talk about it? No, that's anti-Semitism. So that's what the country is. The country has Jewish and Israeli blasphemy laws, and the only Jesus blasphemy law that's being passed is not saying you can't blaspheme them. It's just you're not allowed to have biblical discussions about who killed Christ. So it's not hard to see what's going on. Here's the thing. There's two constant arguments on the right, which are, I believe, easily beatable in a debate. One of them is they'll say there's so much anti-Semitism, they need special laws in order to protect them. Here's the thing. The laws are making it more unpopular. So if your true agenda, and I believe at the top of the Zionist pyramid and at the top of the Republican pyramid and the Christian John Hagee style pyramid, I believe these people are extremely selfish. I personally don't think that they care about all Jews. In fact, I think that most Jews, they don't care at all about at all. And they're willing to basically put them in a bad situation in order to push forward with their agenda. So not only do I not believe that they care that much as they're pretending to, but also if you really do care, you just turn someone like Scott Adams, who was pro, and he's responsible for his own actions and words, but he was super pro-Israel like 6 months ago, and he used to constantly fight with people over it. Now he's saying, I want to say all these rules on this list. You're trying to take away my First Amendment. Now I care. Now I'm going to say it. So you're making more people against Israel than before by passing all these lopsided laws. So if your agenda truly was to help Israel and Jewish people worldwide, you got to stop passing these laws. And once you look into the IHRA laws, in my opinion, it looks like a global blasphemy law. There's no law, I believe, like that's more widespread than Jewish blasphemy laws. Just to be quite fair, there's countries where you go to prison for questioning the history. There's places where you go to jail, I'm sorry, for questioning or doing anti-Semitism, and they get to use it as broadly as they want. It's probably been passed into dozens, if not 100 countries by now. If I just was like Googling like Argentina, it's passed, IHRA definition. It's being passed all over the country. So it's like, it's the most widespread blasphemy law in the world right now, I believe. I can't imagine that it would be surpassed by anything. It's the most common blasphemy law in the country. And the more you try to pass it against, people's desires, the more people are going to dislike it. So this is just my perspective in general. If you really want to help people be loved, stop passing these laws. It's ridiculous that people are saying this is how we fight hate. It's literally not, though. It's the same. And this is the funniest thing. And I'll get to what I'm going to say. But with Christians and, look at BLM and look at Ukraine, they don't realize that they're the exact same dummy on these topics as the BLM and the Ukraine thing. Like they'll make fun of liberals in Ukraine so much and then justify the same exact thing with perhaps even worse logic than a liberal on Ukraine, which I don't agree with either. But it's like the pro-Israel Republican logic of like, oh, we need to give hundreds of billions of dollars to them, but not Ukraine. Why? They never have good points. Because we need to, unquestionably, it's Jesus. And it's like, okay, but I'm asking for a fair, you don't even care. We'll get into that later, a fair relationship. But in general, it's like, BLM tried to help, and we're going to get into BLM later too, and the real, brains behind BLM, because it's not Patrisse Cullors. But anyway, when it comes to them, they claim that they wanted to help racial unity, but they didn't, in my opinion. They only made it worse. Are we just supposed to let them steamroll over everybody all the time and be like, well, they say they're helping? No, it's the same thing with these anti-Semitism, hate speech laws, and people that are so biased against that topic. It's not helping. And Republicans don't realize that they're doing the same things as BLM in Ukraine, but they don't realize it. So it's not helping. With that being said, and I'm speaking specifically to Christian Zionists, because they believe in a certain John Hagee, promoted version of the Bible, which Christians never believed for thousands of years and just mysteriously believed when Theodore Herzl thought of the idea of Zionism to create the Jewish state, which ended up in the hands of the Rothschilds, just factually based on the Balfour Declaration. Look it up. So then the Rothschilds got this land, and now all of a sudden, after thousands of years of a lot of Christians, I'm not going to say all of them, they believe that Israel was Christians in the church and the people who followed Jesus. But now, because of the Schofield Bible and pastors like John Hagee just pumping it down their throats every single second, they were like, oh, in order to be a good Christian, I have to worship Israel or else I'm going to go to hell. And this is the end times. Here's something I want to point out about this conversation. If you, and this is the Christians that say, these are the end times. We're basically manifesting the end times. We're funding the end times. We want this to happen. Jesus is going to come back. This is awesome. Don't get in the way. Like, that's why I'm a Zionist. That's why I love Israel. And I don't really care what happens. Let's just say that we're true, right? If you truly believed that funding Israel now was bringing back the end times. First of all, your book doesn't say that the Jewish people that don't give their life to Christ, they're not going to heaven. So what a unholy relationship that is, where they have a different fundamental belief than you. You might not even know it because you're so brainwashed. They probably know that you have a different belief. And it's like you're working together with people that haven't given their lives to Christ that you don't even think is going to get into heaven. They know this about you. It's just like, I guess you don't know anything about them, but whatever. Okay, so that's a little odd and quite the unholy relationship. So you're working with people that you don't even believe are going to get into heaven. Are you telling them that when you go to Israel and say, yeah, oh my gosh, you're my best friend, we're great allies? Are you telling them that you think that they're going to go to hell if they don't give their lives to Jesus Christ? Probably not, because they'd probably call it anti-Semitic. In fact, it is being called anti-Semitic on Twitter. If you say Christ is king, they're saying it's anti-Semitism now because you're forcing your religion down their throat. So now, and there's also was one politician, I believe, that was floating the idea to outlaw Christian preaching in Israel at a certain point, where they were going to make it illegal to, preach and spread the gospel. So it's like which is fine. I'm just saying, like, you're working with a religion and a group of people that not only don't believe in your Lord and Savior, but you actually, according to your own book, don't even think they're going into heaven, but you don't want to tell them that, or you don't even think about that. Or maybe you think that they are going into heaven. I'm not really sure, but that's a little odd. Also, what's super suspicious is if you believe this was the end times, right? You're working with Israel, and even though you guys disagree on stuff, they're our greatest allies. You can't think straight. You're giving hundreds of billions of dollars, and that's going to bring back the end times and the mark of the beast and the Antichrist, and then Jesus is going to come. Okay, if that's the case, America is going to fail, right? America has to fail. It's part of, many people believe it's part of the scripture. It's like America is not going to last if Jesus is going to come back. So this is why I don't believe Christian Zionists. It's not that I don't think you could have a point to it. I believe a Christian Zionist who doesn't even care about politics. Then I'll be like, okay, this guy, like, he's just sitting at home saying, it's coming. I don't care. It is what it is. Then I'm like, oh, I believe him. He believes what he believes. But a Republican Zionist, they're constantly complaining about the border. They're constantly complaining about illegal immigrants. They're constantly complaining about the inflation. They're constantly complaining about Biden. They're constantly complaining about the left and the college campuses and this and that. Why are you complaining? Don't you? America needs to fail under your ideology. You think that right now, in this relationship with Israel, is the end times relationship with the biblical Israel. So why even care? That's why I don't believe them. Because if they truly were like, you know what, this is it, we have to basically sacrifice our country, we have to do whatever we can for them, because then all this bad stuff's going to happen, and then Jesus is going to come back. There's no reason to even care about politics. Why would you even want Donald Trump to win? Like, how are you going to fix the border when the bad things are going to happen to the country? They have to happen to the country under your ideology. So it's like anybody that's a Christian Zionist, that's a Republican, that's constantly complaining about the left, doesn't even believe their own ideology of what they think they're doing right now, because they're basically role-playing and cosplaying the end times of not just America, but the world as we know it. So it's like, if you really believed that this was coming soon, of course you'd get right with God. That is Christianity. Get right with God now. The end times could happen at any point. Absolutely. But there's no way you could possibly believe it, because you wouldn't even think twice about America falling. You'd be like, yeah, it's getting destroyed. This needs to happen. This means we're closer. Why would you fight? Why would you simultaneously help people that you think are bringing back the end times, yet you're complaining about your country falling apart as if that's not part of the story? Here's where I personally disagree with Christian Zionists. I have done enough research to the point where I don't see the part in the Bible that says you have to worship a group of people that doesn't believe in him in order to get to heaven. And I believe that you should be getting right, because the end times could be at any point. So you should get right with God. With that being said, I'm not trying to role play and manifest the end times right now, because this is not the first time Christians have done this. It's been thousands of years of Christians thinking the end times tomorrow or next year. It's good if it inspires you to get right with God, but you don't think when empires collapsed in Greece or where all over the world, crusades to this people got over, to this nation went big and small, and World War I and World War II, you don't think Christians at the time thought the world was ending? You don't think there were moments where there were cycles of like good times create weak men create hard times? The same cycles have happened in human history multiple times. So it's like this idea that it's the end, it very well could be, but also it just could be the end of a bad cycle, and then a good cycle could be coming around the corner after the bad cycle. It doesn't necessarily have to be the end times. And in fact, there's Christians who have thought this for thousands of years. So this is just my personal opinion. I don't try to predict when it's coming. I just try to live my life. And, you know, I have a lot of improvements to be made, but I don't believe my role is to bring back the Antichrist, to bring back Jesus right now. I think it's just like, get right with God and don't, you know, allow thinking that it's tomorrow. Like, let it inspire you to get closer to Christ. Don't let it inspire you to basically like give up your nation, give up your country, and just let it get destroyed. Because hundreds of nations have gotten destroyed previously, and it wasn't the end times. It wasn't like, oh, we got destroyed, here's the end. It was like, it wasn't the end times. They just lost. You know, like in human history, people just lose. There's winners and losers. So with that being said, with America, you know, when you look into the Christian Republican Zionist worldview, they won't admit it because they're doing two things at once. They're simultaneously thinking the end times are right around the corner, yet they're not just allowing them to come. They're constantly trying to like fight for their country. And the reason they lose every battle for their country, the reason the left is winning, the reason the Marxists is winning, the reason the rhinos are winning and the neocons, and the reasons Republican boomers have got scammed for the last 50, 60, 70 years, and they just started realizing when Donald Trump got in office, the reason is that they're not playing a winning game. They're half in and half out. They're half in the end times, but they're crying about it. If you just accepted it, just be like, you know, we're going to heaven soon. We're destroying America purposely for Jesus and Israel. You know, that's our role. It's like, I would respect that more. A Zionist Christian who is like honest about it. Like, yeah, we're letting everything go to crap because we're prioritizing a foreign nation who doesn't believe in our Lord over our own nation, our own religion, our own everything. And yeah, it's not going to work if you think that way. But they don't do that. They're half in on the one side. Oh, the immigration's happening. Yeah. I wonder why. You know, there's a lot of reasons. You want to look into it? Oh, it's the left. It's like, yeah, but it's not just the left. It's also a lot of the right. Oh, you're hateful. It's like, what? You know, it's like Donald Trump passed a speech law and people will be like, but the left did too. Yeah, I know. That's the problem. Both parties are. They're like, oh, you're just hateful. It's like these boomer Christian Zionists, they don't believe anything that they actually say, or else they'd just be waiting for the end times. So this is the point that I'm going to get here. Me personally, I am not calling for no alliance with Israel. That's just not, I'm not like saying, oh, because, you know, I don't like a lot of things that Canada does, but I get that they're an ally in a weird way. So it's like with Israel, what I'm calling for is a fair relationship. But when you talk to Republicans, especially Christian Zionists, they haven't even thought about that. They're so brainwashed by pastors like John Hagee. They've never even thought like, oh, is this relationship fair? They're just like, dump. They're basically just like, take all my money, do everything you want. Listen to these politicians, like these Republicans. They're like, take it. It's like they work harder for Israel and Zionism than they do for America. But here's all I'm trying to point out is if you're doing that for the end times, if you're working harder for Israel, most of the people there do not believe in Jesus Christ. Most of the people there have ethnic loyalty to themselves. They don't really, they're prioritizing you second. If we're in a relationship with Israel and Israel's prioritizing their race and their nation and their politics first and America second, and American politicians are prioritizing them first and America second, America's going to lose that relationship and America's going to fail. Of course, that's why America's failing now. It's not just the left. It's both parties. Both parties are not prioritizing America. On the left, it's like America 25th and not America first. And on the right, it's like America 10th. Like you're not first because Israel's first, and then the pharmaceutical industry, and then foreign aid bills, and then Ukraine, even though they pretend like they're not supporting Ukraine. It's like you're so far down the list. And the only way to ever fix the actual country is to get American politicians who prioritize America. So this is just the hypocrisy of the Christian Zionist, is they claim that the end times are coming and they need to support a nation who does, although they think they have the exact same beliefs, they really don't, which is fine. It's just like you think that you need to support and fund and basically pass hate speech laws for another nation at the detriment of your own nation without any critical thinking skills to have your leaders come to the negotiation table and make sure it's fair. In fact, someone like Joe Biden, who's awful, he's not just like throwing ammo. He's already given tens of billions of dollars to Israel. Yet yesterday he was like, I'm going to hold some ammo for a second. And Mike Johnson's like, give it to him right now. It's like, dude, can we have a conversation? Can we get something out of it? No, we just got to funnel everything to them while we're getting hate speech laws. Similar to what Scott Adams said. I mean, Scott Adams was a little snotty and a little angry, but, you know, his thought process is not wrong. It's like, why doesn't that country say anything about the ADL? Why doesn't that country say anything about the hate speech? Like, you have to be an idiot. Do you think Israel doesn't want the IHRA speech laws being passed around the world? You think they don't want that? They could have spoken out and been like, these laws are ridiculous. Like, we want people to support us, but not at the, you know, on the infringement of your constitution. They don't care. They probably support them. Obviously, it's a speech law. It's a blasphemy law in a foreign country that stops a foreign country from talking about you. Of course they like it. So it's like, Scott Adams is like, why don't we get something out of this relationship? Why don't we? Because both parties are so in the bag that they don't want any leverage. And the second that a Democrat or a Republican uses America for leverage to get something for Americans, Mike Johnson freaks out. Donald Trump will freak out. They'll all call him anti-Semitic and, like, you know, just say they're hurting or they're hating. So it's like, it's just so crazy because the Republican Party has basically lived the last 40, 50 years putting Israel and Zionism first, which they're doing it, the Christian Zionists, they're doing it because they're saying we need to support Israel. I don't believe this, but they believe the nation of Israel, the physical land of Israel, given to the Rothschilds through the Balfour Declaration in the 1900s with the Schofield, you know, John Hagee version of the Bible, Theodore Herzl Zionism. They believe that's hand in hand with their Bible. And if they don't support the physical Israel, that's the Israel that Jesus or that the Bible was talking about, and they need to do it. Okay. Let's just say you're right. You need to support that physical land. Why? Why do you need to support that physical land of people who, quite frankly, to be honest, they don't believe in Jesus? In fact, there's a religious text that says that Jesus is boiling in hot excrement for eternity. So you think you have to prioritize a country that has a religious text that says that Jesus is boiling in hot shit for eternity, while there's certain politicians over there literally writing op-eds in the Wall Street Journal saying America should take the immigrants, the Gazan immigrants, the ones that they just told you are terrorists. There's an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal with Likud party members and IDF people in Israel writing op-eds telling you to take the immigrants that they just told you are Hamas and terrorists. They want America and Europe to take the immigrants. Why? Because they're Israel first. They're like, you take it. We like our country. You take them. And Republicans are like, oh, shucks, why do we have to take them? Because you don't have real representation in your country. They're not serving you first. And here's the kicker that all I'm saying is be consistent. If you believe that that's okay, all of this is okay, and you shouldn't say anything about it, think about it, use your foreign aid as leverage to stop that stuff, or even come to the negotiating table and admit that it's happening and ask them to stop. Why would they stop when you're just like, okay, and you run around doing it? What do you want out of this? Why are you sacrificing America, Christians, for this? How is that beneficial to you? And when you listen to the John Hagee washed people, they'll say, well, because we need the end times to come for Jesus to come back right soon. This is the time with Israel and the altar. Okay. If that's true, doesn't America have to fail? Yes. So then why are you fighting against America failing? And they don't know. They've never thought about any of this stuff for 50 years. They've been so brainwashed that they don't know. They can't win a debate with me on this topic because they've never thought about these things. They're just running around making zero sense. If you really thought that this was the end times, America's going to fall. America has to fall. You should be happy America's falling. And it's not a surprise that it's falling. It's not just the left. Our allies that we're giving tens of billions of dollars to are writing op-eds in the Wall Street Journal saying, you Christians, you Republicans, take the people that we just called Hamas, take the people that we just called terrorists, take these immigrants that we don't want and Egypt doesn't want. You and Europe should take them. Why? Because they serve their country. They don't care if you have to take them. And the kicker is, you shouldn't care either. Don't you want America to fail for your end times prophecy right now? Yes. Then stop complaining about everything. Wait, you don't want America to fail? You don't want your kids to grow up in a nation that doesn't work? Then why are you not saying anything when people we're giving tens of billions of dollars to are writing op-eds in the Wall Street Journal saying you should take it? Like, what are you? If you know what it's so obvious, it's so simple. But these stupid boomers, these stupid Zionist Christian boomers, no offense, they've never thought about any of this stuff in their life. It's got to be one. Do you want the end times to come soon? You think it's going to come soon by supporting this nation? Yeah. Then let America fail and be happy about it. Be proud when the borders are open. Be proud when our allies in foreign countries write op-eds in American papers telling us to take in the immigrants and the refugees that they just called terrorists, because that's what's happening. Wait, you don't want that? Then say something about it. But they don't say anything about it. They just get mad at people who say stuff about it. They're like professional idiots. Everything I said just made sense. I don't even know what they would say to that. It's mind-bogglingly ridiculous, but that's, what happens when people don't critically think at all. Go to my Facebook page and look at me talking about Ukraine and Israel. It's filled with stupid boomers, most of which are Christian, being like, oh, but we have to give them our money. Why? Because it says so. I don't think it does, but you think it does? Okay. So for what? For the end times. So America's going to fail? Yeah. Then why do you care? Why do you care if we're giving money to Ukraine? I'm trying to think of his name. The Mayorkas guy, who's supposed to be the border guy, he used to work for literally a Jewish organization that is pro-open borders or pro-illegal migration or whatever they call it, refugees or, however they want to twist it. But they're not against the migration situation that's going on. And he's running the border. Okay, sure. But now there's hate speech laws to say that it's hate speech to mention that it's happening. Okay. Do you think a Christian organization could work in Israel and be like, yeah, leave the borders open? Of course not, because they like their country. Of course they want their borders closed. Why wouldn't they? I respect Israel for actually liking themselves. It's like, I'm not mad at them. It's like you got hundreds of organizations in America, literally hundreds, that are pushing for all of these far left policies under the guise of religion or race. And now we have blasphemy laws to stop people from even mentioning that it's happening. It's ridiculous. But the point that I'm making before I move on, I think I've made it clearly enough. If you actually believe the end times prophecy, you would be totally okay with America internally being destroyed. If you're not, then you have to use your country, your nation as leverage to ask certain questions. But if you don't use it ever as leverage and you just think unconditional support then you lose. Like it's that simple. Pick a side. You know what I'm saying? Either you're going to lose everything or you're going to say something and use your country as leverage to get a fair deal. I am not asking to cut ties. It's not going to happen. My opinion doesn't matter. I'm not trying to cut ties with a foreign nation. I'm simply asking our leaders to come to the negotiation table and say, if we're going to give you tens of billions of dollars in foreign aid, can we get some leverage out of it? Can we get something out of it? Or no, we're just going to have hate speech laws being passed in America by Republican politicians.